Welcome to Aligning District-Created Rubrics. This session is specifically designed for districts planning to develop or implement a district-created rubric. During this session, we will provide guidance on aligning district-created rubrics with TIA requirements. The information in this session does not apply to districts using T-TESS, Danielson, Marzano, or NIET TAP. Participants will review the components of an effective teacher observation rubric, develop an understanding of the observable dimensions, and self-assess their district-created rubric to determine next steps. Before diving into the content, let's first review a few TIA reminders to set a foundation. TIA is here to support districts as they build systems that help recruit, retain, and reward teachers. The goal of TIA is for districts to design an effective and individualized designation system that meets their unique district contexts and ensures they have accurately identified their most effective teachers. As you develop your local designation system, there are 3 critical decisions your district will need to make. Who is eligible? How will they be designated? And how will they be compensated? This presentation is designed to support districts with the teacher observation component that is an important part of determining designations. All teachers and eligible teaching assignments must have teacher observation and student growth data during the data capture year. In addition, some districts choose to include optional components as part of determining designations. This is an opportunity for districts to include local priorities within their local designation system. Today's session will help you better prepare the teacher observation component, specifically focused on aligning your district-created rubric to ensure it meets all statutory requirements. We love this bit of advice from a TIA participating district. Start by surrounding yourself with people that can answer the questions. As you engage in the process of aligning your district-created rubric, it's important to acknowledge that this will require multiple people, teams, and departments within your district to collaborate to develop an effective district-created teacher observation rubric that meets the needs of your local context. Now let's discuss the components of an effective teacher observation rubric. We are going to focus on 3 key criteria. The first is that a strong rubric should describe levels of progressive teacher effectiveness. In other words, what does a highly skilled teacher do as compared to a less effective teacher? The second criteria is a strong rubric should be predictive of student growth. This means that all the discrete teacher moves that are required for students to grow is captured in the rubric. And finally, it should utilize observable language. Describing levels of teacher effectiveness. This means the rubric clearly defines what yields a particular rating for each behavior on the rubric. Typically, this includes the use of progressive descriptors. Districts will also be required to identify a proficiency marker. Which level must teachers achieve in order to be considered proficient? Best practice is to describe performance levels for each behavior rather than using a blanket description. On the next few slides, we'll look at some non-examples and then an example of what this might look like. Now, we encourage you to pause the video to read through the rubric and identify why this is a non-example. This rubric does not represent best practice. There is a list of teacher behaviors, but there is no clear definition or progressive description of what would yield each of the ratings indicated on a scale of 1 to 5. This example is a slight improvement. This rubric defines the performance level broadly in a way that applies to all sections of the rubric. This is better, but not best practice, and will likely lead to a calibration problem. Now let's look at this example. T-TESS is the Commissioner Recommended Teacher Appraisal System. This rubric can be found on the T-TESS website. This slide shows the rubric for T-TESS Dimension 3.2. There are 5 levels of teacher effectiveness, and it is clear proficient is the proficiency marker for this rubric. The rubric progressively describes teacher behaviors in this dimension. The Danielson rubric is also an example that represents best practice. What the teacher is doing at each level of teacher effectiveness is described within the rubric. This rubric has 4 levels of effectiveness. Please note there is no requirement regarding the number of levels of teacher effectiveness that must be included within the rubric. Now that we've reviewed a few examples for this first key criteria, we're going to pause here and take some time for you to begin to self-assess your district-created rubric. We have developed the rubric alignment protocol to help guide you through this self-assessment. This tool lists all the key criteria discussed in this session, includes the questions to consider, and provides space for you to note your next steps. Your turn. Please go into the session resources and open the rubric alignment protocol. We encourage you to pause the video and complete the first section related to levels of teacher effectiveness. Reflect on the questions to consider and take notes about potential required changes and next steps. A strong rubric should also be predictive of student growth. This means that it describes all the teacher moves necessary during planning and delivery of instruction for students to grow. The rubric should also include teacher moves needed to help a variety of learners, and it should include behaviors outside of the classroom that are necessary for learners to grow, such as engaging in professional development. Chapter 149 of the Commissioner's Rules concerning Educator Standards identifies the performance standards to be used to inform training, appraisal, and professional development of teachers. District-created rubrics must align to Chapter 149. We have developed a tool to help districts determine whether their rubric includes all the behaviors required to be considered aligned to the Texas teacher standards. Districts who use their own rubric must include the district-created rubric crosswalk as part of their application. The document is a checklist to help identify if each element of the Texas teacher standards is included in the district rubric, if the element is described at each level of teacher effectiveness, and the location within the district-created rubric. Districts will also indicate the proficiency marker within this document. The district-created rubric crosswalk can be found on the TIA website and also as part of the resources for this session. Your turn. Pause the video and return to the rubric alignment protocol that we opened earlier. This time, you'll complete the second section related to teacher behaviors. To complete this section, you'll need to open the district-created rubric crosswalk we just reviewed and determine if each behavior on the checklist is included in your district-created rubric. Be sure to note where the behavior is located within the rubric and make note of any missing behaviors. All behaviors on the checklist must be included in the district-created rubric for approval. A strong rubric should also include objective and observable language. This looks like clearly defining terms, eliminating subjective language as much as possible, reducing the number of items per cell, eliminating any instance of the same behavior occurring in different dimensions, and it should focus on empirical evidence rather than judgment. Let's look at a non-example. Here is an example of an indicator that is not yet objective or observable. As written, the descriptor could lead to a lack of calibration. Promotes is not observable. What does it look like? What does it mean to promote? One person's definition of what it looks like to promote learning may be different from others, so it needs to be more specific. We encourage districts to consider 2 questions when reviewing their descriptors. Is the descriptor clear on what we will observe the teacher doing or saying? Is the descriptor clear on what we will observe the students doing or saying? Let's see how a district might revise this descriptor. This descriptor really could be broken apart into multiple observable actions. But here's one. Asks, remember, understand, and apply level questions that focus on the objective of the lesson and provoke discussion. This level of specificity will improve calibration among appraisers and ensure valid and reliable scores. Here is another non-example. Is committed to all learners and their learning and strives to ensure that every learner maximizes their full potential. The phrase is committed to could lead to a lack of calibration because it's not observable. I can't easily observe another person's commitment. My definition of commitment might be different from yours. When I read this, what stands out to me is that the teacher is meeting every student's individual needs. What would a teacher say or do that demonstrates they are meeting individual students' needs? There are several things a teacher might do. Let's look at how a district might revise this. This indicator could also be broken out into multiple observable indicators, but here's two. Provides wait time when questioning students, and recognizes when students become confused or disengaged. Now that we've reviewed a few examples, it's your turn. Pause the video and return to the rubric alignment protocol from earlier and complete the third section related to objective language. Review your district-created rubric for language that is subjective, vague, and requires a great amount of inference. Now let's discuss observable dimensions. T-TESS is made up of 4 domains. Domains 1 and 4, which are the planning and professional practices domains, are not considered observable in statute. Observable means that a rater would not need any additional evidence outside of a single classroom observation in order to score these dimensions accurately. For example, 1.2 is data and assessment. Along with the classroom observation, an appraiser would likely need to use evidence from a conversation with the teacher or artifacts like their data analysis to rate this behavior. For TIA, districts will not submit data from domain 1 and 4 for data validation, but they will use these dimensions in order to determine what, if any, designation the teacher should earn. So every teacher should have a full appraisal using the full rubric, but ratings from domains 1 and 4 will not be reported to TIA. Domains 2 and 3 of T-TESS, which is instruction and the learning environment, are considered observable in statute, meaning a rater could accurately rate these dimensions using only evidence gathered during a classroom observation. Observable dimensions are reported out during the data validation step. For district-created rubrics, observable dimensions are those indicators that are aligned to domains 2 and 3. Here is an example from the NIET TAP rubric. We needed to determine which dimensions in the NIET TAP rubric were considered observable for the purpose of data validation. Since we are defining observable as T-TESS domains 2 and 3, we had to determine which NIET TAP indicators align to the dimensions in domains 2 and 3. What you see here are domain 2 indicators. At times, there are more than one NIET TAP indicator which is aligned to each T-TESS dimension, and that is okay. Here are the indicators from the NIET TAP rubric that were excluded because they were not considered observable. The rationale for each one is either it was aligned to a dimension in domains 1 or 4, or that it was not represented in T-TESS at all. Let's discuss the importance of identifying the observable dimensions. There are 3 main reasons. First, aligning on observable indicators increases fairness of designations across the state. Second, during the data validation process, you will submit data only for observable dimensions, so we need to clearly define that for every rubric. Third, we also create an individualized data reporting template for districts who don't use T-TESS. We have developed an optional tool that may be submitted with your application. The Observable Indicators template helps to ensure that districts have a voice in which dimensions are considered observable from their district-created rubric. So if you would like, your district may submit a recommendation regarding which indicators from your rubric should be considered observable or aligned to domains 2 and 3. We will take this recommendation as we make our final decision. If you choose to do this step, you can submit the template right along with your application and crosswalk. Now it's your turn. Pause the video and return to the Rubric Alignment Protocol document and complete the fourth section related to observable indicators. Review each indicator in your district-created rubric and determine whether it aligns to domains 2 or 3. These indicators will be considered observable, and your district will report ratings during data validation. We have reviewed several documents today and want to be sure everyone understands which are required and which are optional tools. The district-created rubric crosswalk is a required document that districts must complete as part of their TIA application to prove that their rubric is aligned to the Texas teacher standards. This is basically a checklist of behaviors included in Chapter 149. The Rubric Alignment Protocol and the Observable Indicators template are completely optional and are simply meant as tools to help you evaluate how strong your rubric is overall. As we conclude this session, we want to revisit the questions that your district will need to answer as they prepare their application. Who is eligible? How will they be designated? And how will they be compensated? An aligned rubric is a key part of being able to answer question 2. It's the foundation to the observation component. As you continue to design your local designation system and prepare to submit your TIA application, here are 4 key takeaways to ensure your district-created rubric is aligned to TIA requirements. Ensure your rubric describes levels of teacher effectiveness. Remember, there is not a set number of levels required. Ensure your rubric is aligned to Texas teacher standards. Districts must submit the district-created rubric crosswalk with their application. Ensure your rubric uses objective, low-inference, observable language and identifies the observable dimensions. Thank you for watching this session. Be sure to access additional resources on the TIA website or email the TIA inbox with any additional questions.